Okay, so let's start with this afternoon wrap-up session. Let's look at a couple of details. Now, again, unfortunately, I had to be out a little bit this afternoon and away from the charts for a good little chunk of the day. The one thing that I did, you know, send out a Twitter message, and again, this would have been a little bit more of an active entry order, but I just, again, didn't have time. But I sent out the Twitter. Hopefully, everyone saw that. Talking about this right here is, to an extent, a bullish flag. So we've got our flagpole right here and our flag that's kind of waving in the semi-soft wind. But hopefully you guys saw that, because we did end up with a very nice breakout on this euro dollar finally. It finally did make a move, and it ran up a grand total of almost 80 pips from the breakout area. So there was a pretty easy 50 pips in there. And so I hope you guys were able to kind of take advantage of that and get some of that movement there on this euro dollar. So looking at that and kind of going into some of the other setups that we have going on, we ended up with a nice bull flag breakout on the euro dollar. We had the same kind of bullish flag breakout here on the pound dollar as well, and saw a good little move on that. Thank you very much, Donovan, for posting those. I appreciate it. So we had some nice little breakouts, some nice little movements. Those flags broke, and we saw some good activity out of them. Now, just as a reminder, everybody, I got a couple of questions this morning, and I was trying to multitask and trying to answer questions and so on, but related to flags and a bull flag and all that stuff and what it is. And just a reminder, this is a pretty good overall textbook setup of what a bull flag is. So we have just our flagpole, which is our strong candles up, and then we end up with some sort of consolidation. Typically it's pretty nice to see a little bit of sideways consolidation so that we can get that breakout up, but it still counts when we have retracement, and so we can still see that there's a channel here and that we have retracement. Now remember, just a quick little explanation on flags versus and we don't ever talk about this stuff too much because I just don't bring it up, but it's it's kind of good stuff to know. This right here is a flag, and it basically signals continuation, that there's going to be some sort of continuation. And then there's also pennants, and I'm sure you guys have heard of pennants. And basically that's the same kind of deal where you have some movement up, but it's where the consolidation, you have some downward movement, but you have more of converging trend lines. So here we have two parallel trend lines, and we see this breakout up. And a pennant would be something that we could have, I don't know, I don't see an example immediately, but something where two trend lines would be converging. So we would have like a, forming more of a, like a triangle kind of a thing. So anyways, just a little quick mention on that since we had a few questions about that this morning. But either way, both of those have basically the same signal and the same meaning, which is breakouts and continuations in the direction of the previous movement, which in this case is up. Okay, so on the euro dollar, now one thing I did want to bring up here really quick, a window that I forgot to bring up here, is I am pretty curious what the retail traders are potentially doing with this move here. So it's always kind of good to see this stuff. So let me just bring those pages up real quick. It'll take me just a moment. And okay, good. All right. Okay, so as of today so far, with all of this movement, some pretty nice rallying that we've seen on euro dollar and pound dollar, and some interesting sideways movement on pairs such as the Aussie dollar and so on. We've got some interesting stuff to be looking at here. So far, it looks like euro dollar long positions between the few different brokers sit in the low 40s, low 40s. So a lot of traders are kind of looking for this for a reversal to happen. So we're kind of at 43, 44%, right around there, of positions are long, and then obviously the majority are short. Pound dollar, for some reason, we're seeing that everyone is much more bullish pound dollar, so we're at about 60% long pound dollar positions, and obviously about 40% short. So there's a lot more bearish outlook among retail traders on the euro dollar than on the pound dollar. So once again, more traders are short on the euro dollar, and more are long on the pound dollar. That's retail traders once again. And then we see also that we have there's a couple little things to mention here. We have Aussie dollar positions remain, good grief, the Aussie dollar is just always way up there. So we're right at about 80% long Aussie dollar positions among retail traders. 80%. So that's kind of an interesting thing to take into account on all of that. So anyways, that'll be good stuff to add to our repertoire as we try to continue on with some of this movement here. Okay, so the euro dollar continuation, I'm still looking for this to move up. Now, the few things that we need to remember here, let's get rid of maybe, well, let's see, we've got a couple of lines here, but the few things that we need to remember that number one, the euro dollar has bounced off of the yearly low like crazy. So overall, nearly 500 pips off of that yearly low, it's bounced, which is obviously a big chunk. Now, if we look at the high to low of this range that it's retracing on, it's still consolidating and staying below the 61.8, which is around 131.65. So we're staying below 131.65. But it's been, you know, it's been quite the major retracement and recovery here off those lows. Now, a couple of levels that are going to be important to watch. Number one, so again, we're at the 61.8 right there. That's just a little reminder. So anything beyond the highs is going to, you know, kind of cancel out that retracement and put us more in the way of, you know, of a new movement up. You know, we could be headed into that 76 and so on, but usually once we get past the 61.8, then it's, you know, it's new direction at that point. Okay, so what we have seen on this movement up from the low to the high, and this was pretty good textbook stuff. So yesterday, as we went into the, as we did the wrap-up session, this was something we talked about, and this is something that played out, is we talked about this level, and a couple hours after we finished the wrap-up session, you can see that we dipped below the 23% fib, and it pulled back up just a little bit, and then it ran down and hit that 38. So that was a perfect textbook run into the 38, which also happened to be the daily pivot point. So remember, you know, if we're ever curious about where that daily pivot point is going to be, it's almost always right at or just slightly overlapping or really close to the 38% fib. So those are always pretty accurate right there. And you can see the same situation. So it came down and hit that level. Now remember that probably, I would say, a good majority of the time, I don't know the specific statistics here, but a good majority of the time when we reach that 38% fib, we almost always seem to get to the 50 at one point or another. Now the 50% fib you can see is down here at 129.80. So what I'm ultimately looking for here is if we get a little bit of a run up, I'm still looking for a double top to happen on this euro dollar. If we get a little bit of a run up, I'm interested in shorting against these highs because we've run up to R3 on the weekly pivot points, and we're finding a lot of resistance up here around the 61.8 and around these highs. So we've had our nice bull flag breakout, and ultimately I'm going to be looking at getting short against this high. Now we're currently 111 pips off the high, so you know, we have a little ways to go. I'd like to see this bump up maybe another 50 or so pips, and then I'm going to be looking for opportunities and reversal candles and so on to get short against that high, targeting that 50% fib. That's where I think the medium-term movement is going to play out. Now, if we get rid of this bull flag mumbo-jumbo right there, you can see that there's a really sharp kind of trend line potentially in the works, and you can see that we have a little bit of a channel right here that we'll want to just keep an eye on. Just a little short-term channel. It's been a big reaction, but so far this is a fairly well supported channel. We have some tops and bottoms right in this area right there, so it's going to be a good idea to keep an eye on this channel. And again, that's why I'm looking to get short against that high to see if we can get a run down to that channel and then a breakout of it. Remember, this is a very short-term channel, and so that should be good for a breakout area. One thing that I will look for, though, likewise, is if we do, if this does end up kind of just trickling down, I'm going to watch for reversal candles against the 38% fib and against these daily lows and against the daily pivot point to see if we can get a push back up there. But ultimately, what I am ultimately looking for is opportunities to get short against this high, targeting the 50% fib, the 200 moving average, and some of this stuff down here. So that's what I'm looking for, and I think we might just be able to see it. Yeah, I remember, Donovan. I remember you saying that 12900, and I thought that's a pretty extreme difference there. But so did yours end up showing up at 129.08? Is that where yours ended up being? Because I definitely got mine over here at this 130, about 130.30. But yeah, I don't know. What do you do? Sometimes it seems like it's pretty accurate, though. Your pivot points and mine seem to be fairly on. I don't know why they were so different yesterday. Well, actually, I can see definitely why they would be different yesterday, because if you're a couple of hours different from my charts, which you are, most of the time going into the next day, we have this kind of sideways consolidation. But if you're an hour or two earlier than me, which I think you are, then my pivot points would have come out as things started to slow down, and yours may have come out before this huge spike up. So I can definitely see that why that would be. I bet your day started right as that big spike up, was happening, or right before it happened. So yeah, that makes lots of sense. Okay, so anyways, guys, that's kind of what I'm doing on the euro dollar, and I'll just be looking for those opportunities to get short against that high. There's nothing else too crazy looking on this setup just yet. And again, as long as we stay below those highs, I think we'll have some good movement there. But so far, we're just getting into kind of some of the summer chop here. Now, the one thing that we're going to be a little bit left wondering is whether or not this low is going to break. So remember, this is a pretty significant support, and we usually don't break those major significant levels during summer. They do sometimes, but it's not as common. So ultimately, what I'm looking for is a run down into those lows and that kind of stuff. Just trying to get back down into that support, and if it breaks, great. If it doesn't, then we'll move on, kind of a thing. But ultimately, I do want to get short on this pair. Okay, pound dollar. So again, we had the same thing. Pound dollar, bullish flag. We get a nice breakout. It ends up, breaks that trend line and spikes up about 95 pips. So a pretty good little move there on the pound dollar as well. Now, the pound dollar is doing a couple of interesting things for us. This shorter term channel we're breaking out of, and we're holding fairly well. So we've had a pretty nice breakout there. We have consolidated, for several hours right here, just around that 38% fib by several hours, 12, 14 hours, right around there. And then it finally, made that continuation up. And we have a lot of resistance up here around 152.75.80 area. You can see our high of last week, which is just shy of, well, the high is just about 150. It is exactly 15300. Let me see, to the pip. 153.04. So the high of last week is basically 15300. We have the 200 moving average and the 50% fib of this whole movement right all at 15300. We got a high here of this recent movement up with this bullish candle right there. We got all the way up to 152.20. I'm definitely looking for opportunities to get short on the pound dollar at 15300 or just below 15300. So I think that's going to be a good opportunity coming up here, and so that's what I'll be looking for. Now, the thing that we have to be careful of is also this pound dollar movement. It's breaking out of a major channel, and there could be a lot of momentum there, and that's why I think if we can get short a little bit closer, if this thing can get up there, obviously it's got a little ways to go before we get really into that safe zone. We need to get it up about 100 pips or so. I think there's going to be a nice opportunity at that 150. near 15300, 152.75 ish areas where I'll be looking for. Now, I didn't mention the daily pivot on the euro dollar because it's basically right on top of that. Looks like our daily pivot's going to be around 130, 80, 85 area on that euro dollar, and we're here at 130.95. So I don't think there's too much to trade on that. But the pound dollar is going to have a little bit more of a difference there. So it looks like our pound dollar daily pivot is going to be around 151.35 or so, and here we are at 151, just shy of 151, or just over 151.75. So we've got a nice 40 pip run on this one. So I think that there is a good little short-term opportunity. If we get a little spike up, let's look to trade against this high. Just a typical, daily pivot type setup here. So we've got this high, goes through some consolidation back there, some strong-ish resistance. Let's see if we can get a little spike up towards this. We're about 45 pips off the high. If we get up 25 pips or so, get within 25 pips of this high, let's look to target that missed daily pivot down at 151.35 area. So I think we'll have a good daily pivot trade. Basically, euro dollar, we're kind of waiting for it to get higher or lower to potentially buy off the dips or sell off the rallies, but most likely we'll be looking to sell off that rally. Pound dollar, we just, on the short term here, we want to sell against this high, we want to short against this high and target that missed daily pivot. And ultimately, if it does, say we get stopped out and it runs, it kicks us out and runs higher, then we're definitely looking to get short at around 152.75, to 15300 in that general area. So that should be a really nice setup. Again, there's no super crazy candlestick anything happening right now. We're just looking at fib levels, and again, we're still we're just kind of between, barely above the 38% fib and nicely below the 50. So that 50 should be a great little area to get short on this pound dollar, and I'll definitely be looking to do that. But again, for the short term, look for a little spike up, short against this daily high, target the missed daily pivot point on the pound dollar. Does anybody have any questions on that? Remember, the pound dollar has got about 60, low 60 percentile of trades are retail positions or long. So this really kind of strengthens a case for possible continued sell-off. So we may get that little spike and then that move down to that daily pivot. So I'm definitely going to be looking for that. Now, the one thing we have to be careful with just a little bit on these daily pivot runs, we don't have any specific news coming out. There's nothing too exciting happening in the next, let me just double check, but I don't think we have anything really exciting happening. We have Australian home loans, and then we don't have any big UK news. We have a little bit of US news tomorrow. But, it might get a little choppy. It might get a little bumpy. But if you do get short on the pound dollar, aiming for that daily pivot, there's always that chance that it can spike up there just a little bit, but it always seems to make it down to those pivots, unless we have something crazy strong at play, which we might still, but it looks like things are sputtering out pretty nicely. So maybe give it just a couple of pips above this high, maybe 10 or 15 pips above the high. Try to get in as close to the high as possible. Give yourself maybe a 30 or 40 pip stop, and get in as close to that high as possible, maybe 10 or 15 pips from it, so that you have a stop that's maybe 30, 20 or 30 pips above that high, and target that lower area, which will, be 50, 60, 70 pips, depending on your entry. So I feel very strongly that it will reach that missed daily pivot coming up in the next, in the next 12 hours or so. So just keep an eye on that. Okay, Aussie dollar. Some interesting stuff on the Aussie dollar. Remember, Aussie positions are crazy, ridiculous, insanely long, and they continue to be. So let's look at our. Let's quickly look at Aussie dollar. Our missed pivot on the Aussie dollar, 92, basically about 9,200. So that's a pretty good little move. Oops, 9,200 is going to put us right about up here. And you can see that we're 30 or 35 pips away from that. I still, for some ridiculous reason, I still like getting long on the Aussie dollar. Now, we didn't do it this morning. and I kind of, we were watching this, and I watched it and just ended up not getting into it. I didn't really want to trade too much today during our morning session because things were kind of crazy looking. And then they started moving kind of later in the morning, and the Aussie turned out very nice. Remember, we were looking to trade against this low, and we got within 25 pips of that low. At this lowest point, we got within 25 pips of the low, and it obviously bounced up 70 or so pips from that area in a really nice little move. I still think these are good support areas right here. But the one thing that we have to be a little bit cautious and careful of is the fact that, we had this big bounce off this double bottom, and the Aussie dollar came and bounced off the weekly pivot, and then we had this huge reaction up with the news, of course. And then this pair has actually retraced more than all of the rest of them. Pound dollar really more consolidated. Euro dollar did retrace quite a bit, but is working its way back up into those highs. The Aussie dollar, on the other hand, ran all the way up here, 200 pips, which is less than the other pairs as well. So it rallied less and it pulled back more. So that is kind of, a little bit of alarming stuff as far as the bullish movement goes. But so far this trend line seems to be holding here. So let's look for, once again, same type of situations. Let's look for opportunities to get long against this low. We're going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at this low now to get long against towards that missed daily pivot point. So currently we are about 45 pips off the low. Again, let's see if this thing can push down another 20 or 25 pips so that we can have some tight stops, and get your stops down here, at least below this low, if not even below this low here. And let's target that missed daily pivot. As far as ultimate, big time movements and so on go, I think the Aussie, still is somewhat holding up. Interestingly enough, it's breaking out of this descending wedge right here, and it's holding up. It broke out, it came back, tested the trend line, big reaction, and it's kind of testing this stuff. So I still like getting long. I don't love that retail traders are crazy short. Crazy long. That is definitely a little bit of a concern, but overall I think there is still a good opportunity there. One thing we do have to kind of watch here, though, and this is where this daily low is going to be important. This daily low sits at around 91, just about 91.20 is where that daily low is. So you can see that right there, about 91. Well, actually, previous day low is what I'm looking at a little bit more. If we break that previous day low, then we're going to have some train tracks here. So that's just one little thing to keep in mind. If we break this low right here, which is around 90, 9100, that puts us kind of at a threat of train tracks, which are perfect reversal patterns, and we're working on that right now. We have one that's just a little bit shorter. This candle body is a little bit shorter than the previous one, but whenever you have a bullish and a bearish candle body on larger time frames that both candles are approximately the same size, as soon as one of those highs or lows breaks, it usually leads to fairly significant movement. So if we break below that 9100 area, which is basically the low of this bullish candle on the daily chart right there, then I'm not even going to try to see if this low is going to hold, the 90.36. I think we're going to be breaking that and going for it. So ultimately our big level to trade against is this one right here, which is which we're 75 pips away from. But I think for the daily pivot trade we can trade against this daily low here. And the Aussie interest rates being priced in, the potential change in Aussie interest rates. Of course, markets always expect one thing or another, but I never. If something is so excessively talked about and you see that things are trading in that direction, then oftentimes that can mean that things are getting priced into the market. But I always leave room for lots of surprise when it comes to central bank and interest rate stuff. And I think definitely that talk of Aussie rates being cut potentially further and scope for further easing, as they've been talking about, definitely is weighing on the Aussie dollar for sure. But technically speaking, it still is making higher lows, which is important. So yeah, that type of stuff is priced in to some degree, but it's not, it's not fully there just yet, because again, you've just got to leave so much room for surprise when it comes to central bank stuff. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Any questions on that? Buy on the dip, trade against this low for a run into the daily missed pivot point. And otherwise, ultimately trading, if we get a nice dip, if we break this low, then let's still try to get long against this, because this will still be kind of the breaking point for that ultimate reversal, which could take the Aussie dollar down through this low here. So I'm still looking to buy on the dip, but again, if we break through, if we get back below the weekly pivot point, basically, then I'm bearish Aussie dollar at that point. Okay, so questions, comments, let me know on that. Aussie yen is, the yen pairs, again, I'm still, ultimately my outlook on yen pairs is that they're going to continue higher. We're going to continue to see yen weakness, but, it gets a little bit tough as you see these continual lower highs and so on, and the Aussie yen has bounced pretty nicely there. We have a double bottom that's in play that we need to keep an eye on, which is around 8,900. And if we get down to that, then I'll be looking to trade that bounce one more time. But ultimately, I'm not doing too much on the Aussie yen just yet. We'll keep an eye on things. We'll see where they go. We'll have a missed pivot point at around 9,100, so there may be a good little opportunity to trade that little short-term opportunity. So just kind of keep an eye on some of those entries, on maybe some shorter time frames. That'll be something good to watch. 15-minute chart, we've got some space between the 200 moving average, and that market tends to like to get back to that pretty often. So there might be a nice little opportunity for that bounce. If we get back down into the lows, for example, this might be a good opportunity to buy against that low, once again targeting that missed daily pivot point. But I'm not doing too much with the Aussie yen just yet. On the Aussie yen, we've got a bit of a a bit of one on the Aussie yen. It's a sketchy one, but we do have converging trend lines, which again can typically mean continuations of trends. But absolutely, but again, Aussie yen's kind of a little bit of the middle ground. Euro yen it's getting choppy and messy. Now you can see that we've kind of been, for the last, it's almost been an entire, it's creeping up on a week and a half here of the euro yen just kind of, we have some highs and some lows, and it's kind of bouncing in about a 200 pip channel for the last couple of weeks, and that's getting pretty messy and pretty ugly to trade with. Yet, however, we see that this 4-hour hammer, we talked about this yesterday, I think. 4-hour hammer has held on this ascending trend line, and we actually ended up getting a pretty nice bounce off of that, and then it's just consolidating and getting messy. So again, I'm more holding out on the yen pairs than anything. The one thing that I have talked about that I do like quite a bit on the euro yen is still the fact that we have this daily hammer right there, and I think that still merits some long positions. So again, look for opportunities to get to get long against these two lows and against this this trend line. So if we end up with some kind of crazy spike down of 75, 80, 90 pips, then there should be a good opportunity there. Now, of course, we will have opportunities with any kind of yen craziness. I don't think we have. Let's see where the missed pivot point is. 129.55. So we're not too far. We're pretty close to that one. Again, just watch for some dips down, and this may run back up into that pivot point. But I don't think the yen pairs are giving us too much nice movement that's really worth putting our money on. I think right now we've got some really good opportunity on euro dollar, pound dollar, and Aussie dollar pairs to again sell the rally against the high on the euro dollar, excuse me, and sell the rally against the high as well on this one, just targeting a little missed pivot and ultimately getting in at that 50% fib to short and buying the dip on the Aussie dollar. So remember, these are probably the two most important levels right here. If we stay
And this one's not even so super important. It's semi-important, but this is still a very important low because remember that's the bottom of the daily train tracks that we got to watch out for. So otherwise, it's all, there's some good setups. I'm going to post the details in the notes. Let me know any questions, comments you guys might have. I'll be happy to cover anything. And I'm going to update the notes real quick, and I will be here all evening, and I'll be just looking for any little pivot point trades or anything that we can get into there. So hang on one moment, or feel free to get any questions going. I'm going to get this video uploading real quick, and then I'll update the notes, and I'll be here to answer questions and hopefully get some entries going.